Hey, it's CDA, and today I have for you my guide to Starrupture. This is going to be short and to the point, at least that's the intent, but make sure that you use the links in the description if you want to look for something specific. Let's start with a very basic question. Which one of the four characters should you play? Well, the answer is it doesn't matter. You can play all four of them and you can switch between them, and from a mechanical perspective, they are exactly the same. However, I highly recommend that you pick the engineer because it just has the best lines in the game. Once you get out of the lander, just go over the hill and you will find some materials over here to the left. Now, a couple of things about movement in this game. First of all, there is a double jump, so you can press the spacebar twice and to kind of like, get a second little bit of height to your jump. And something the game doesn't really tell you, but if you press Alt, you will do a little dash that you can see happening over here. That just speeds things up. That is something you can definitely use to escape enemies, for example, or just make a further jump, because you can double jump and dash all in a row, so you can make pretty far jumps. To get you through your first 10 minutes or so of the game, make sure you mine yourself some basic materials. You can do that by just targeting pretty much anything that is mineable and hold the left mouse button. Now this will speed up as long as you do it continuously. You can see it going faster and faster until your gun overheats, and then you will need to kind of let it cool down for a bit before you can do that again. Just do this a couple of times so you get some base materials in your belt. You'll want some of this titanium, and you also want that red stuff over here in the back that is called wolfram. Don't overdo it though, because you'll likely want to automate this very quickly. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need to build some stuff, and in order to build some stuff, you'll need some basic setup. So, like the tutorial will tell you, you can build yourself a habitat. Now, if you scroll up or down, you can place items higher or lower. There's a maximum height, as you can see, so you can't just go all the way up. But this will allow you to place things on the ground very effectively, so you don't have to jump up all the time. Now, if you want to make sure that all your buildings are at the same height, what you can do is just press Alt and then target another building, and it will automatically level the building to the height of the building that you're placing it next to, making it very easy to make, nice flat factories. So Alt to level buildings next to the level that is already there. Once you get yourself a little bit of wolfram ore and titanium ore, you can turn that through your basic item printer into some basic building materials. You're going to need a lot of these, so you definitely don't want to keep doing this by hand, but we'll get to that in a second. As you're progressing through a tutorial, you will unlock more and more buildings, and having to go through all of these menus for buildings that you use a lot of is kind of annoying. So what you can do is click on any building or hover over it with your mouse button and press the letter R, which will add it to your favorites. It's right down here, but it's easy to miss, and that will put all these buildings into a single tab. Very easy to access. Now, obviously, you don't want to add everything to here, but especially the things that you use a lot are going to be pretty useful. You want to build at least one of these orbital launchers so you can start progressing on the actual campaign, and you're gonna want to make sure you power this as well. So go back into the menu, and as you can see now, because I added things to my overview over here, it is that much easier to make sure I can build it very quickly. When you first get the warning for a rupture, you have about 2 minutes to get back to your base, so keep that in mind. You don't need to stop building immediately if you have a base close by, but if you're out exploring, well, you might either want to build yourself a safe place or get back to one. Now let's go over some more advanced techniques for building. Now, first of all, if you're wondering how I'm flying around, this is the drone that you will unlock about halfway into the mid-game, so don't worry about it, you'll unlock it soon enough, but if you don't have it yet, you'll just have to build everything from the ground from now on. However, when you're building, try to keep as organized as possible and take advantage of how this game works. First of all, everything that is connected to each other, it doesn't matter if it's by rails or by platforms, will transfer power. So you can only build power in a single place. As long as everything is connected to that place, your power will transfer. You don't need to have dedicated power in every single of your factories. Something else to keep in mind is the throughput on your belt. So the tier 1 belts, the rail V1, only have 120 items per minute, which typically will mean that you can only have 2 of these excavators connected to a single rail before it's completely filled up. Once you get access to the version 2, this will allow you to double up, so about 4 of these excavators will fill a single rail. Now keep in mind though that some of these excavators will have faster speeds than others, so you might want to check them if you really want to optimize everything, but they will always be producing at least 1 item per second. Oh, and before I forget, speaking about the drone, once you unlock it, you probably want to go into the gameplay options and put the building drone option to always. That means that whenever you start building something, it will default your settings to use the drone. And since building from the air is much easier than building from first person, that is likely the option you're always going to be using anyway, so you might as well set it to make your life as easy as possible. Now, I've actually tried several different types of layouts for my factory, but this one is the one I would recommend to all of you. So, what you do is you make sure you have an incoming line with some resource, can be raw resources or something that's already manufactured, and then you put it into the machine, and then at the other end of that machine you have the output going on a belt once more. Now you make sure that that goes into the opposite direction, like you can see it doing over here, and then you can build a new line of machines. Now this line ideally also uses whatever you're producing in the previous line, so you can connect these up and just make sure you have the in and output as efficient as you can get it. As you can see, I'm doing that over here as well. Some of these resources are going to go into these machines, but the other resources is going to go up to the next line if you're not using it, and then you make another row of machines. Make sure to leave some room for the output of these machines, of course. And you can just keep doing that. Make sure that you kind of double back on your in and outputs every time, but honestly you don't necessarily need to do that. As long as you always have an input line and an output line, then you can make sure that you can keep your factory neat and organized. You don't really need to worry too much about ratios in this game, because as long as you're producing enough to consume all the previous stuff that you're producing over here, then you can use all of your resources to kind of alternate depending on where they need to go. Because rails in this game are smart. Stuff is only going to go on a rail if it actually has a destination. So this is why you can see that these rails are automatically dividing some of my resources between these machines and these machines and these machines, even though they're all producing something different. So if one of these machines stops working just because it's already full and the resource is not needed anymore, automatically all the resources will then go into the next machine. So it's really easy to set up a very flexible factory like this. Something else I highly recommend that you do is set up these storage units at the end of every production line. This just makes sure that you're always producing stuff, and while you're expanding your factory, there's typically times, usually pretty long times, especially if you're also doing some exploring, where your factory is just sitting there. So you might as well make sure that you're producing as much as you can, because you will need all these resources later on. And it's a nice way to kind of boost your more advanced production by stocking up on the less advanced production, basically. On top of that, if you ever need certain resources to unlock new recipes, then you can just go and grab them from your stockpile. Once you get access to more advanced machines that require multiple different types of inputs, I still recommend that you keep everything to its own belt, just to make sure that you don't get belts clogging up too fast, because your output will go up and up as the game progresses. Now, in order to make that neat and organized, you can do something like this, what I've done here with these splitters. Now, something the game doesn't really tell you is the fact that if you press the middle mouse button once you place down one of these splitters, you can then use your scroll wheel to make them go up and down. And as you can see, you can make them pretty high and you can make them pretty low. So this is a very easy way to make sure that your belts don't get in the way of each other. At the same time, something else the game actually only tells you for the splitter, but it also holds for every other building. If you want to align things a little bit more neatly, you can press the right mouse button and it will swap the foundation. So you can see now it's in the middle of 4 foundations, and now it's in the middle of a single foundation. You can do that with other buildings as well. So for example, let's take the orbital launch. You can either put it on a 2x2 or a 3x3. So it depends on how you want to align things, how you might want to place this down. And to give you an impression on what this looks like when you have a more advanced facility, you can see that right over here. So this is multiple machines all requiring multiple different inputs, but you can still see it is very organized. And, you know, if you like an organized factory, this type of build is definitely something I would recommend. You can also see that I'm using these cargo dispatchers and receivers over here. So to get more advanced materials from A to B, you can use that. I also have all the power just somewhere to the left of my facility in this case. Doesn't really matter where you put it, but again, as long as you have enough and everything is connected, then everything will keep working. Similarly, at the right side of my facility, I still have all my storage over here. And you can see this is all still working like intended. Now, once you get to the real end game, you will get more and more different types of materials, so you do run into a little bit of spaghetti here and there. But if you work at it, you can keep things pretty organized. As a general rule, most machines will work fine if you have 6 of them in a row, and well, you don't need to keep to that. But if you just build everything by 6, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to keep everything very neat looking, and it will be pretty optimized for most production lines. Now there's a couple of exceptions, especially the later machines get really slow, so you want to probably double up on that, maybe make 8 or 10 or even 12 of them. But for the more basic stuff, typically 6 of them works fine. A final thing to keep in mind is that I would generally recommend that you kind of spread your factory all over the place and make little pockets out of them. You can see that I've done that over here as well. You can see a factory in the back and another pocket over here and another pocket, etc, etc. If you do it like that, it's a lot easier to handle your core overheat level, as you can see on the top. If you go above this threshold, every rupture, your factory will be basically going offline for a little while, which is kind of annoying. And as long as you keep within the limit, it is still annoying, but at least your factory will be working a lot better. If you want to increase your overheat level, then either upgrade your main bit cores. That is a very expensive process though, so, you know, do that not all over the place, but only where you need it. But the easier way of doing that is by building these little base core amplifiers, but they only get you 20 additional capacity for every one you build. Of course, you unlock better stuff along the way, but these things are pretty expensive to build. So if you want to avoid doing all of that, then the easy way is just to build smaller pockets and spread out your base. In the beginning of the game, things will be pretty straightforward. Just check what the corporations ask from you, build that stuff, and then start working on the next thing you unlock after that. However, at some point you will run into a problem because they will start asking for stuff you can't actually produce. You will run into this problem pretty early on if you don't have enough data points to gather the new recipes, or if you are a little bit further ahead already, you might run into these recipes that actually require you to have blueprints. You can't just buy blueprints, you're going to have to find them in the ruins on the map. And in case you're wondering, yes, there is a map, but for some reason you need to unlock it. So, you know, I'm not going to spoil you anything. This is pretty much just the starting area, but you will have a map and that will allow you to kind of just know where you're going. But you'll have to actually walk around and uncover it, so you won't be able to just see where you're going right up front. In terms of exploring, pretty much any building you see on the map like that, or like over here, these are all buildings you can already see from the start. These are all going to be important locations that you will want to visit. But also, for example, if you see a hill and, you know, you're wondering what's behind that hill, well, the answer is there's probably something of interest there. And in most of these ruins, you are going to find one or more blueprints that you will need in order to progress. So if you don't have the blueprint you need, so basically what you need to do is go find more ruins, explore them, and get your blueprints. Now I will leave a link in the description that will lead you to a very nice map that will tell you exactly where all the blueprints are, so you don't have to wander around endlessly to find them. But you know, if you want to give yourself some challenge, try to find them by yourself. Now, I'll try to keep this guide as spoiler-free as I can, but because I know it can be very frustrating if you can't find resources by yourself, or blueprints by yourself is what I actually meant, then I would suggest that you go either all the way north, because all the way in the north is where the most advanced resources are, or if you're a little bit in the mid-game and you're still stuck, you probably need to go to the east. That's all I'll say, but that's the two directions that most of the blueprints are going to be found. If you do start to go out and explore, I would recommend to bring as much ammunition as you can. There's no such thing as having too much ammunition. You're going to need to defend yourself against the aliens, so bring at least like half your inventory worth of ammunition. You're also going to want to bring yourself some building materials, not too much, just a couple of stacks is probably fine. This is likely already way too much, but last but not least, you're also going to want to bring some hydro bulbs and some polyfruits to make sure you don't die from thirst while you are out there. Something else that is really important, and you want to keep picking these up as you go and go around, is meteorite hearts, because this will allow you to build new base protection, and this is going to be vital for making sure you don't have to kill enemies 24/7. Now, as you can see, I built these base cores all over my starting area, and I also kept building them whenever I started to explore more outwards. Now, the reason for this is very simple. Every time you encounter aliens, then defeat them first and foremost, but then build another base core pretty much right on top of where you encountered them. This will prevent them usually from spawning once more, and that makes your life a lot easier, so you don't have to keep fighting them over and over again, because they will respawn after a couple of ruptures. Now, when you see enemies, there's a couple of different ways you can deal with them. Either you can get yourself an upgraded assault gun, so you can take them out from a long distance, or you can do something a little bit more sophisticated, and that is building a couple of these platforms like this. And this will make it a lot easier to defend yourself against the enemies, because if you are standing on one of these platforms, the enemies will need to come to you, and I will demonstrate it right now. As you can see, they will jump on the platform, but you will have some time to shoot them. And especially if you bring yourself a shotgun, you can very easily just take them out one by one as they jump on your platform. Now, of course, if there's a lot of them, you might still get overwhelmed, but generally speaking, it's a lot easier to defend yourself from a platform like this than to try and deal with them when you're still on the ground. Alternatively, what you can do is you can set yourself up with some turrets, make sure they have ammunition as well, and then just lure the enemies toward your turrets. Now, that works very well and obviously gets you a lot more firepower, but it is very hungry in terms of the amount of ammunition that you're going to be going through, because these things just keep shooting. And, well, they kill stuff, but it is pretty inefficient, so you're gonna want to bring yourself a lot more ammunition. Honestly, I haven't really felt a lot of use for this particular tactic, other than some very late game areas where there's just so many enemies it's annoying to kill them all yourself. Keep in mind though that if the enemy comes close to your base cores, they can infect them, and that will give a complete cloud of blue infection that will drain your shield. So yeah, then you need to actually go in, get the infection off your tower and cleanse your tower again. So yeah, try not to get overrun while you're doing this. When you find these very large monsters, the easiest way to deal with them is just to make sure you get behind them. So try to get rid of the other enemies first, and then you just move around with the dash function, and you can shoot them up there behind, and that makes them pretty easy to kill. Now right now I'm fighting two of them, so that's not ideal. But yeah, as you can see, I can just easily hit them and keep avoiding them by just dashing around. So you can see, not too much of a problem. Just keep shooting at them and try to aim for the unarmored parts, and you'll quickly defeat them. For the first 10 minutes or so after a rupture has occurred, you will have this ashen world around you. Kind of hard to get around in, but the benefit of this is that there will be no creatures. So you can run straight into an enemy base, loot it completely, and then run back out again as long as you're quick enough. You only have about 10 minutes, but 10 minutes is quite a bit of time. You will encounter no creatures whatsoever. I hope you found this guide useful. If you did, make sure to like the video, it does really help me out, and feel free to ask any other questions you have in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. I also do content like this on a regular basis. I stream these type of games, I make videos about them, so if you enjoy these things, then make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Either way, if you're still here, you are awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.